So, today I want to talk about something that we tend to take from our children. Sometimes it's done intentionally, sometimes it's done unintentionally. We can tend to take our children's innocence. There's multiple ways that you can take a child's innocence from them. We all know the first thing that pops to mind, which I won't say what that is because that can tend to be a trigger for some people. But I think that we all can kind of guess what was the first thing that popped to your mind when you think about someone taking a child's innocence. But another common thing that is done primarily with boys versus girls, um, when you introduce the idea of young boys having girlfriends at a very young age, that tends to take away that child's innocence. So the way that it steals their innocence is that at a young age, children should be children. They should not even be looking at the opposite sex as a potential, you know, partner. Everything still should be kind of co-ed, and everything still should be innocent. Everything still should be pure. You play with girls and boys with the intention of having fun. You, have a conversation with the opposite sex with the intention of having a conversation. So everything should be pure with children. That's the one thing that I love about children that we all can kind of pick up and learn from kids is that they don't have any ulterior motives. They're pure, they're genuine, when they're at the playground, they can make friends with anybody because they're just trying to have fun. It doesn't matter your race, creed, color, if you have any deformities, if you have on the best clothes or shoes or whatever, they just want to have fun. So they don't look at the prejudice they hadn't formed or been impressed upon with all the prejudices that us adults, have formed or that we have. So kids are just genuine and pure. They just want to have a good time. They just, you know, they're just genuine. But when you introduce the idea of young boys having girlfriends, then yes, then that puts that idea when they interact with a young girl, that puts the idea that that girl could possibly be a girlfriend. So now what do they think that they do with girlfriends? Do they think that they will kiss a girl? Do they think that they will touch a girl? Like, what do they think that they would do with a girl? So now this puts things like that on their minds, which young boys, they shouldn't have to think about things like that. And oftentimes you will find, fathers doing this with young boys because they want to, um, in a way, they want to protect their manhood, so to speak. They want to make sure that they instill in their kid that they should like girls. So I get the gist of it, but Introducing the idea of a girlfriend at a young age is not the way to go about it. You can talk to young boys about, the birds and the bees. You can talk to them about the dangers of things, but don't force the idea of looking at the opposite sex in a objective way at an early age. That's setting them up for failure. That's stealing their innocence. That's objectifying young girls to that young boy. That's teaching them how to objectify a young girl that just last week was just somebody to play with. They didn't even look at that girl as a gender. They know that it's a girl, but they don't look at, when they're pure and genuine, they're not looking at the opposite sex as ooh, as a girl, that's something special. That's just a girl. Like, okay, this is the color blue and this is the color orange. It just is what it is. It's nothing special. But when you introduce the idea of a girlfriend to a young boy, that objectifies that girl, because now she's that's my girlfriend. So this is just something to think about. This is something to watch out for. And like I said, I do understand, men wanting to solidify their son's manhood at an early age, but let's find another way to do that. Let's teach the child how to work out. Let's teach him how to, play sports or something. But anything but introducing the idea of a young kid, a young boy having a girlfriend. Now, this can apply with girls as well. The way that it usually applies with a girl is that girls will be introduced with the idea of a young boy being her husband, and it's the same thing though. It's the same thing that steals away that girl's innocence, because that's objectifying that young boy, when at that age that young girl should be looking at the boy as a playmate, as a classmate, as a friend, or whatever that the relation is to that child. Anything but as a girlfriend, anything but as a boyfriend, a wife, or a husband. Let's keep children in a child's place, and let's actually be adults.